She handed him the check, and the truth that would shatter his perfect life. Your fiancé is cheating on you. He barely looked at her. Weeks later, he returned, not with anger, but a question, why did you tell me? If you're ready to hear the whole story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because, tomorrow, I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let's get into it. The restaurant buzzed with the usual rhythm of Friday night money. Plates clinking, wine pouring, voices too loud with fake laughter. Ivy Calder weaved between tables in scuffed sneakers and a borrowed smile, balancing a tray like a dancer. It was the 5th time someone had called her sweetheart in 20 minutes. Refill on the Merlot, table 12, barked her manager, not looking up from the host's stand. Got it, Ivy replied, already halfway there. Table 12 was laughter and red lipstick and designer handbags parked on chairbacks like trophies. The woman in the center wore a white silk dress, sharp collarbone, sharp tongue. Her hand curled around a glass like it was meant to break hearts. Ivy filled her glass. The woman didn't look at her. None of them did. It was Ivy's 5th shift that week. Rent was due Monday. Her shoes had holes. Her hands were cracked from hours of hot water. And still, something in her posture stayed upright. Watchful. Like a wolf who'd learned not to trust the forest. Across town, on the top floor of the Delmore Hotel, Julian Vale stared at a glass of bourbon that had gone untouched. Around him, Boston's elite toasted the future Mr. and Mrs. Vale with forced grins and firm handshakes. His fiancée, Camille Alcott, was radiant. At least on camera. She kissed his cheek for the photographer. Smile, darling. You look constipated. Julian forced one. Just soaking in the joy. The engagement party had cost more than most weddings. Imported orchids. Live string quartet. The champagne had been flown in from a vineyard he now technically owned. He felt nothing. Not joy. Not fear. Just the dull throb of obligation. He'd inherited Vale Capital at 27 after his father's sudden stroke. Since then, his life had become a spreadsheet. Acquisitions, appearances, asset protection. Camille had come with the merger between 2 private equity firms, her father's and his. They called it the perfect match. He called it tolerable. Until tonight. Back at the restaurant, Ivy ducked into the supply closet to grab more napkins. She didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the staff hallway connected to a VIP booth with thin walls. She heard laughter first. Then a woman's voice, cool, amused, careless. Julian thinks I'm at yoga right now. God, you're awful, another woman giggled. What he doesn't know won't kill him. Besides, a pause. Have you seen Ben without a shirt? Laughter exploded. Ivy froze, napkins clutched in hand. Camille. Table 12. The woman she'd just served. The woman whose face was on half the tabloids next to Billionaire Bachelor. No more headlines. Ivy didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Just listened, until her stomach curled. She didn't sleep that night. She went home to her small studio, where the heat only worked if you kicked the radiator twice. She sat on the edge of her bed, clothes still on, replaying the voices. Julian thinks I'm at yoga right now. She could say nothing. It wasn't her business. Rich people had their own rules. But still, she remembered the man on the news. Serious. Quiet. Like he didn't know how to smile without asking permission. Ivy had been lied to her whole life, by social workers, by foster homes, by the boy who'd promised he wouldn't leave. She didn't want to be part of someone else's lie. So she wrote a note. Printed it. Walked to Vale Capital the next morning in a clean shirt and nerves. The receptionist gave her a look. Do you have an appointment? No. Just, could you give this to Mr. Vale? The woman narrowed her eyes. He won't read random notes from strangers. Ivy nodded. Then tell him the waitress from the Silver Fork has something he'll want to hear. About Camille. That worked. 10 minutes later, she was standing outside Julian Vale's corner office, palms sweating, throat dry. He opened the door himself. Tall, sharp suit. Eyes that looked like they'd once cared and then stopped. You said you had something to tell me. I did, Ivy said. Do. He looked at her like she was a spreadsheet that didn't add up. She swallowed. I waited your table last night. Camille and a group of women. He blinked. Go on. I overheard her talking about a man named Ben. It wasn't innocent. She said, she's been lying to you. Silence. Cold. Long measured. Then, why are you telling me this? Ivy blinked. Because it's the truth. Or, he said calmly, because you want attention. Or a payout. No, her voice stayed steady. Just a clean conscience. Julian stared at her for a long time. Then turned. Thank you. You can go. She nodded. Didn't look back. That night, Ivy came home expecting nothing. No call. No fallout. Just quiet. Instead, the news hit. Julian Vale ends engagement to Camille Alcott. Sources say, personal betrayal. Ivy stood in her apartment kitchen, holding her breath. She hadn't lied. But she hadn't expected to be believed either. Julian sat in his car outside the tower. The city moved in silent streaks around him, pedestrians, cabs, digital billboards flashing headlines. His phone buzzed on the console beside him. Camille, 17 missed calls. He stared ahead, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Ivy's voice echoed in his mind. Because it's the truth. Her tone had been calm. Measured. Not demanding. Not pleading. She hadn't asked for anything. And that's what unsettled him most. People always wanted something. Leverage. Favors. But she walked in with a quiet bomb, and left like she expected nothing would come of it. That night, Camille burst through the penthouse door, fury and fear spilling out in sharp consonants. How dare you embarrass me in front of everyone? Call off the engagement through your assistant. Julian sat in the leather chair beside the fireplace, whiskey untouched on the table. I heard what you said, he replied evenly. At the Silver Fork. About Ben. Her breath caught. That waitress. He looked at her, and the silence between them was sharper than any raised voice. You didn't deny it, he said. Not even now. Camille blinked. So what? You were never in love with me anyway. We were building a future, not writing a fairy tale. Julian stood. You built one. I was just financing it. And with that, he walked past her, out of the room, out of the engagement, and, he hoped, out of the lie. At the Silver Fork, Ivy's co-workers knew. Someone had leaked the story. The whispers weren't subtle. She's the one who told him. Wonder if she's hoping for hush money. I bet she wanted him all along. Even Marta, her closest friend there, pulled her aside near the lockers. Why'd you get involved, Ivy? I heard the truth. And he deserved to know. Marta exhaled. Yeah. But now everyone thinks you're chasing him. I'm not. But they don't care. Ivy pulled off her apron, lips tight. Let them talk. But her hands were shaking as she said it. 3 days later, the door chimed. Ivy looked up from her station, and nearly dropped the water pitcher in her hand. Julian Vale. He was standing near the entrance, not flanked by security, not hiding behind sunglasses. Her manager rushed forward. Mr. Vale, your usual booth? I'm not here to eat, Julian said. Just here to speak to one of your staff. All eyes turned toward Ivy. She blinked. I'll be outside. They stepped onto the loading dock. Quiet, gray, cigarette butts on the concrete. Julian exhaled. Thank you. Ivy crossed her arms. For what? For telling me what no one else would. She shrugged. I figured you'd already know. I didn't. I suspected. But there's a difference between doubt and truth. He paused. You're not going to ask me what happened? No. Why not? Because I didn't tell you to get involved. I just thought you should have the information. He looked at her again, like trying to solve a puzzle. You expected me to ignore you, didn't you? Yes. And when I didn't? She glanced away. Then I expected you to get angry. He nodded. I was. A beat passed. But not at you, he added. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. I want to compensate you. For your honesty. Consider it. No, Ivy cut him off, voice firm. He looked surprised. You're not going to read it? I don't want your money. It's not about. Yes, it is. Her voice cracked slightly. To people like you, everything is about the transaction. I didn't tell you to get something. I told you because I've been the person no one listened to before. She turned to go. He stepped forward. Then what do you want? She looked back. To be left alone. And then she walked back inside, past the staring coworkers, through the whispers, leaving Julian standing in a city he could buy, but not control. 3 weeks passed. Ivy clocked in. Took orders. Smiled just enough to pass as functional. Julian never came back. The whispers at work faded, replaced by new gossip, new scandals. People moved on. But Ivy didn't. At night, she stood at her window in her tiny apartment, staring down at the street below where headlights crawled like veins of light. She told herself she didn't care. That billionaires like Julian Vale didn't actually remember women like her. And yet, every time the door chimed at the Silver Fork, her breath caught. She hated herself for it. Julian filled his days with meetings, portfolio reviews, conferences, morning runs that turned into punishment. His assistant asked twice if he wanted to reschedule his calendar for personal time. He didn't answer either time. The press had moved on. Camille had posted a carefully curated breakup statement. Her father's firm pretended it was mutual. But something didn't reset. His penthouse felt colder. The silence between board meetings grew heavier. Worse, he found himself avoiding the Silver Fork entirely, even though it was across from his office. He wasn't sure what he was more afraid of, seeing her again, or realizing she was just a passing ripple in a very large, forgettable pond. One night after close, Ivy and Marta were stacking chairs in silence. Marta leaned on a broom. So, be honest, she said. You liked him, didn't you? Ivy paused. Who? Marta laughed. Girl, come on. Ivy looked away. I liked that he listened, she said finally. And that he didn't ask me to lie. That's not the same as liking someone. I know. Then what's stopping you? Ivy set down the chair. It's not about him. It's about me. I don't want to need anyone who can walk away that easily. Marta nodded. But her face was soft. You don't have to be afraid of needing people, Ivy. Just pick better ones. Julian sat in his home office, flipping through contracts when a slip of paper fell from between the pages of a report. It wasn't his handwriting. It was a guest comment card from the Silver Fork. Thank you for seeing me. Not because of who I am, but because of what I said. That's rare. No name. No signature. But he knew. It had to be hers. His hand tightened around the card. For a moment, the perfectly planned structure of his life bent. Just slightly. And in that bend, a question appeared. Why do you miss her? The next morning, Ivy passed by Vale Capital on her way to pick up Marta's birthday cake from the bakery downtown. Her heart thudded when she saw Julian exiting the building. They were across the street from each other. She froze. So did he. He saw her. Really saw her. But neither moved. A car passed between them. A flash of red. Then another. And just like that, he was gone. She turned the other way, pulse hammering, heart hollow. That night, Ivy sat at her kitchen table, finally pulling out her sketchbook again. Her old dream, interior design, had been collecting dust. She drew a table. A long oak table. One side was filled with people. The other side, one chair. Empty. She stared at it. Closed the book. Across town, Julian stood in his rooftop gym, gloves wrapped, punching bag swinging. His trainer yelled cues. He didn't hear them. Each strike landed with a whisper only he could hear. You left. She didn't want anything from you. And you still left. He threw one last punch, and the bag rocked backward into silence. Have you ever walked away from someone just to protect your own pride? What did it cost you in the end? Would you go back if you could? Share your story in the comments. It started with a clipboard and a last-minute schedule change. Ivy had just clocked in at the Silver Fork when the manager called her over. We've been hired to cater a private charity gala, he said. Big one. Vale Foundation. You're going. Ivy froze. Vale? As in Julian Vale? He shrugged. Apparently his team's hosting it at his estate in Marblehead. Fancy guest list. I need someone who won't spill wine on a senator. I don't. You're my most reliable. Don't argue. She wanted to say no. She almost did. But rent was due. And she needed the overtime. So she nodded once. Fine. Julian Vale's oceanside estate looked like something from a movie. White pillars. Cliffside views. Lanterns glowing along a cobblestone drive. Ivy stepped out of the catering van, pulling her black apron tighter around her waist, trying not to feel anything. She wasn't here as her. She was here as staff. A shadow. She hoped he wouldn't notice her. Inside, the ballroom was all soft jazz, flickering candlelight, and polished money. She kept her head down, weaving between tables with practiced grace. It was going well, until she turned and nearly ran face-first into him. Julian. Mid-conversation, drink in hand, suit crisp, eyes sharp. He blinked once. So, Ivy. She swallowed. Mr. Vale. His lips parted, something unreadable flickering in his expression. Before either could say more, her manager snapped his fingers. Ivy, table 7. Go. She nodded and slipped away. But she felt his eyes on her long after she turned the corner. Later that evening, the event began to wind down. Ivy escaped to the outdoor terrace, taking a moment to breathe. The wind from the ocean bit at her arms. She was almost alone. Until a voice said softly, "You always disappear right when I have something to say." She turned. Julian stood behind her. She didn't speak. "I didn't know you'd be here," he said. "I didn't want to be." He gave a small smile. "That makes 2 of us." She glanced away, jaw tight. "Why did you take this job?" he asked. "Because not all of us can afford to say no to work." He nodded. "That was unfair." "Sorry." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Ivy said, "You're not the only one who lost something when you walked away, you know." His head tilted. "What did you lose?" She didn't answer at first. Then, "The first man who ever listened to me like I mattered." A gust of wind pulled her hair loose. Without thinking, Julian reached forward, brushed the strand gently behind her ear. Her breath caught. So did his. For 1 second, the tension between them softened. The ache wasn't sharp, it was shared. "I've thought about you," he admitted. She looked up. "Not because of what you told me, but because of how you told me. You didn't flinch. You didn't ask for anything. You just gave me the truth." Ivy's voice cracked. "And you still walked." "I was afraid." "Of me?" "No," he said quietly. "Of what it meant to feel something real again." They stood in that pause. No music, no staff, no status. Just Ivy, Julian, and the weight of almost. Before either could say more, someone called out from inside. "Mr. Vale, they need you for the closing remarks." He didn't move at first. Then he looked at her. "Can we talk again? After this?" Ivy hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe." He nodded once. And then he was gone. She exhaled, knees weak, heart loud. This wasn't what she wanted. But maybe it was what she needed. 2 nights after the gala, Ivy sat on a bench in the public greenhouse near the Boston Commons, her sanctuary since childhood. She didn't expect anyone to find her there. So when Julian's voice came from behind the potted palms, she startled. "Figured I'd check every place quieter than a boardroom," he said. She gave him a look. "That's most of Boston." He smiled. "Fair." He sat beside her, leaving space. "Thanks for not running," he said. "I considered it. I wouldn't have blamed you." She looked down at her chipped nails. "I'm tired of disappearing." The pause. Then she added, "And I figured, if you came looking, you deserved something real." Julian stayed silent. So she told him. "I was in the system until I aged out at 17, she said. Bounced between 10 different foster homes. Sometimes I had a bed. Sometimes not." He looked over gently, listening. "I learned early not to ask for too much. Or talk too loud. Or trust that anyone was coming back." Julian's throat tightened. "My last foster home, I told the mom I wanted to go to college. She laughed. Said I'd be lucky not to get pregnant first." Ivy's voice dropped. I worked every shift I could get. Slept in a shelter my first year at community college. Got through 2 semesters before I had to drop out. She looked up, eyes gleaming, not with tears, but with the strength it took not to cry. I didn't tell you all this to make you feel bad, she said. I just want you to know I didn't grow up with people who listened. That's why it mattered. When you did. Julian didn't respond right away. Then he said quietly, I didn't know my mother. Ivy looked over. She left when I was 4. My father never talked about her. She was just gone. Like she never existed. His voice didn't waver, but his hands were folded tightly in his lap. I grew up in silence. Not poverty. Not chaos. Just a big, empty house filled with money and no love. I learned to be useful, efficient, emotionless. He met her eyes. I'm not good at this. Feelings. People. But I've spent every day since you walked away asking myself why you mattered. And this is the first time it's felt clear. Ivy blinked. You matter, he said softly, because you see through everything I pretend to be. Their hands were close, barely an inch apart. The greenhouse lights flickered above them, casting warm shadows. Julian turned his palm upward. A silent invitation. Ivy hesitated. Then slowly, gently, she placed her hand in his. No declarations. No kiss. Just skin to skin. Connection. And the smallest whisper between them, maybe. Later that night, Ivy told Marta what happened. Marta's eyes went wide. Wait, you held hands with Julian Vale? In a greenhouse? Like a Nicholas Sparks novel? Ivy laughed. Not the point. But seriously, what are you doing, Ivy? I don't know. That's the problem. Marta leaned in. I just want to make sure you're not falling for something that can't hold you. Ivy's smile faded. Me too. Back in his penthouse, Julian stood at his father's old desk. On it sat a photo of him at 13, suited up for his first investor meeting. He picked it up, then placed it face down. He didn't want to be that boy anymore, the one taught to see people as assets. He thought of Ivy, how she looked at the world like it owed her nothing, but how she gave anyway. She wasn't like anyone he'd ever known. And for the first time in a long time, he was okay with that. It started with a text. Julian, I found a place that serves food your manager would actually eat. Meet me after your shift? Ivy, are there forks? Julian, it's a diner. So yes, but they might be sticky. She showed up in jeans and a sweatshirt, hair tied in a braid, sneakers untied. He was already there, tucked into a booth with coffee and a nervous half-smile. You weren't kidding, she said, sliding in across from him. Julian shrugged. Figured you'd like something real. I like real, Ivy said. I just don't usually get to sit across from it in a $10,000 jacket. He looked down at his sleeve. It's only 8. She laughed. But, free. The sound shook something loose in both of them. They talked for hours. About nothing and everything. He told her about his terrible first job in his father's company, screwing up a speech by calling investors infections. She told him about the time she accidentally served decaf to an entire police precinct. They laughed. And when the check came, Julian reached for it, but Ivy stopped him. You pay in boardrooms, she said. Let me pay in booths. He didn't argue. He just watched her hand him 2 crumpled 10s and a 5 with a corner ripped off. And something about it, her pride, her presence, was more valuable than all his polished deals. That night, Julian walked her to her apartment. She hesitated at the door. It's small. I don't care. It's not impressive. I've seen impressive. It's usually empty. She looked at him, really looked. Then opened the door. It was tiny. 1 window. 1 chair. 1 bookshelf, crammed with worn novels. And a corkboard filled with sketches. He stepped closer. You draw. Only when I'm trying to remember who I am. He touched 1 drawing, a library redesign, all warm lights and soft corners. This one feels like you. She blinked. How so? Quiet. Easy to get lost in. They stood by the door. Close. Her fingers brushed his. He leaned in, just a little. Ivy, he whispered. She looked up. I don't want to rush you. I know. But I don't want to pretend either. I know that too. Silence. Then she stepped closer. Their foreheads touched. And they just breathed. No kiss. Just stillness. And the beginning of something that didn't need a label yet. The next day, Ivy walked into the Silver Fork grinning. Marta raised an eyebrow. You look suspiciously happy. Maybe. Did he finally kiss you? No. Then why the face? Because he didn't need to. Marta smiled. But keep him waiting. Ivy laughed. I think he's the one waiting on me. Well, Marta said, tossing her a notepad, don't make him wait forever. He's a billionaire. He could buy a wife on Amazon. Ivy laughed harder than she had in weeks. And it felt like joy. That evening, Julian canceled a dinner with 2 board members. He turned off his phone, poured a drink, and sat down, not at his father's desk, but at the kitchen counter, where he hadn't eaten since college. He looked around his expensive, empty penthouse. Then pulled out his phone and stared at a photo he'd secretly taken the night before, of Ivy smiling at her corkboard of dreams. He didn't send it. Didn't need to. He just sat with the feeling. And it felt like peace. It hit just after sunrise. A notification on Ivy's phone. A text from Marta, you need to see this. The link opened slowly, like it knew it was poison. Headline, Waitress breaks up billionaire engagement, Julian Vale's secret affair? Below it, grainy photos. Her and Julian outside the greenhouse. Her walking beside him after dinner. A zoomed-in shot of her sketchbook in his hand, captioned, her design dreams, or his next pet project? Ivy couldn't breathe. The article painted her as a manipulator. A gold digger. A woman who seduced Julian Vale away from his elegant fiancé and now plays house from a 1-bedroom apartment. There were quotes. Anonymous insiders. One even said, she planned it from the start. She threw her phone across the room. And it still rang. Julian slammed his office door shut, the paper in his hands still warm from the press office. His assistant looked pale. It's everywhere. And Camille just posted a video saying she forgives you. Forgives me? He barked. Implied Ivy lured you in. That you're a good man who was just taken advantage of. Julian gritted his teeth. Where's my PR team? They're already working on a response. He paced. Shut it down. No statements. No headlines. But I said no. Julian called. She didn't answer. He texted. No response. Finally, she picked up Marta's phone, hands trembling. Marta? He asked. No, Ivy replied. It's me. Ivy, I swear I didn't. I know. But I can fix this. No, you can't. Silence. Ivy, look, this is just noise. We know the truth. Do we? She whispered. Because I thought the truth was private. But now the world thinks I'm your pet project. I never said that. You didn't have to. You're Julian Vale. You don't have to say anything. The world writes the story for you. She sniffed once. I'm tired of being someone people use to rewrite their own endings. Ivy curled up on her couch, sketchbook unopened. Marta placed tea in front of her. I hate people, Marta muttered. Especially rich ones with publicists and perfect teeth. Ivy didn't laugh. I trusted him, she said quietly. I think he trusted you too. Then why didn't he protect me? Marta looked at her. Because maybe he didn't know how. Julian didn't sleep. He stared at the article again and again, memorizing every awful word. He called his attorney. Called the media firm. Called Camille's father. Then he sat at his desk and did the one thing he hadn't done in years. He wrote a letter. By hand. It started with, Ivy, I let you down. Not by what I did, but by what I didn't stop. He stopped writing. Because what hurt wasn't what she'd said. It was that she was right. 2 days later, Ivy turned in her notice at the Silver Fork. No one argued. Whispers still clung to her like smoke. Marta hugged her hard. I hope you find a place where they see you for real. Ivy smiled faintly. I thought I had. She walked out with one bag and a folder of sketches. She didn't leave a note. Didn't say goodbye. She just left. She needed air. Silence. Truth. Ivy took a bus north. No destination, just distance. She found herself in a quiet coastal town, 2 hours away, staying at a bed and breakfast run by a retired librarian who didn't ask questions. Every morning, Ivy walked the shore. Picked up stones. Sketched in a journal that had no names. She avoided news. Her phone stayed off. But every night, she replayed his voice in her mind. You matter because you see through everything I pretend to be. She hated how much she missed him. And hated herself more for hoping he missed her too. Back in Boston, Julian turned down 2 gala invites. 3 press interviews. He met with his PR team and told them, no more spin. No more saving face. I don't care what they say. They didn't understand. But he was done being understood by the wrong people. He walked into his father's study and opened every drawer. Photo albums. Letters. Memories he'd buried. He found a photo of his mother, young, fierce-eyed, holding a baby Julian in her lap. She hadn't left because she didn't love him. She'd left because she couldn't stay in a house that pretended love wasn't necessary. And suddenly he understood Ivy more than ever. The next morning, Julian drove, no driver, no security. Just him, silence, and the leather-bound journal she'd once shown him. She'd left it behind in his car that night after the gala. He hadn't opened it then. He opened it now. Page after page, sketches of spaces Ivy dreamed of. Youth centers, libraries, low-cost housing interiors redesigned to feel like home. In the margins, notes. Kids need light. It makes them feel seen. Warm colors. Soft chairs. Everything in here should say, you belong. Julian closed the book and whispered, you belong. And he knew where he needed to go. By the 3rd night in the town, Ivy sat on the dock and wrote a letter she'd never send. Dear Julian, I don't hate you. I don't think I ever could. But I do hate what it costs to love someone like you. The exposure. The story everyone wants to write on my skin. I'm not a project. I'm not a trophy for being good. I'm just me. And if that's not enough, I'll let you go. She folded the letter. Tucked it in her pocket. Watched the tide come in. The next afternoon, she was sketching a lighthouse when the innkeeper came onto the porch. There's someone here to see you. Ivy frowned. I'm not expecting anyone. You might want to come anyway. She stepped out, heart hammering. Julian stood at the gate. No suit. Just jeans, a button-down shirt, and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in days. He held nothing. Said nothing. Just waited. She met him halfway down the gravel path. Neither spoke. Not at first. Then Julian said, I never wanted to protect your image. I wanted to protect you. And I failed. Ivy didn't interrupt. He continued. I was raised to believe that love was weakness. That silence was safety. But you were brave enough to speak. And I let my fear make you pay for that. He exhaled. I'm not here with promises. Just with this, I see you. Not as a story, or a headline, or some perfect savior. Just you. Ivy blinked hard. He asked, do I still have a chance to earn the rest of your truth? She hesitated. Then said quietly, that depends. On what? If you're brave enough to come the rest of the way. The Silver Fork was busier than ever. New ownership. New paint. New menu. And Ivy was not there. She hadn't come back. But her sketches were on the walls, framed, soft pencil lines showing reimagined spaces. A reading nook. A redesigned pantry for food donations. A chalkboard corner with a sign that read, This is a place you belong. Julian stood at the back of the restaurant, watching people smile at things Ivy had once drawn on napkins. Marta handed him a latte. You're lucky she said yes. He smiled. I didn't ask the question yet. You're lucky she didn't say no. The new space was small but sunlit. Affordable rent thanks to a mysterious investor who insisted on remaining anonymous. Ivy unlocked the door, stepped inside, and stared at the stack of donated sketchbooks and the second-hand drafting table. It was real. She was building something. Not as someone's accessory. Not as a headline. But as herself. Julian arrived 10 minutes later. No press. No entourage. Just coffee and bagels. He looked around. So this is the place? You gonna let me hang anything on the wall? Only if you color inside the lines. He chuckled. And for a moment, they were just two people. Not stories. Not survivors. Just together. She was wiping charcoal dust off her hands when he said, "You know what I remember most about that first night?" "What?" "How certain you were. You said something no one else dared to. I thought you'd ignore me." "I almost did." He took a deep breath. "But then you looked at me like I was worth the truth. And I haven't forgotten that feeling since." She looked up. "I want to be that for you too," he added. "Someone who sees you, says the hard thing and stays." Tears welled in her eyes. "That's all I ever wanted." They didn't rush back into romance. They shared books, took long walks, learned the quiet rhythms of each other. He held her when she cried about her mother, the woman she never knew. She held him when he finally opened the envelope his own mother left behind, hidden in his father's desk. They didn't become perfect, but they became safe. And in the safety, love took root, not the grand, cinematic kind, but the kind that lasts. Months later, at a press event for the New Vale Community Design Initiative, Julian stood on stage before a crowd of reporters. He was supposed to speak about numbers. But instead, he told a story. "Once, someone I barely knew told me a truth no one else would. She risked her job, her reputation, and her peace of mind to say it. And I didn't thank her then." He looked out into the crowd. Found Ivy, standing near the back, fingers laced in front of her. "But that moment changed my life," he continued, "because it introduced me to a woman who didn't care about wealth or power. Just what was right." He smiled softly. "And she was." That night, Ivy found him on the rooftop of their shared apartment. The city lights blinked below. She stepped beside him, arms folded. "You got sappy." "Think I lost points?" "Maybe a few." He turned toward her, something unreadable in his eyes. "I have something for you." She raised a brow. "If it's another penthouse, I'm gonna scream." He handed her a sketchbook. She flipped through it. Each page was hers. Scans of her work. Notes in the margins. Funding budgets. Signed contractor sheets. "What is this?" "A proposal," he said. "For the first space you design under your name. I want the world to see what I see when I look at your work." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why me?" she whispered. He stepped closer. "Because they called you a gold digger, and you showed me what real value looks like." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. She kissed him, slow, deep, full of everything they'd both been afraid to want. And when they broke apart, she said, "You're still not off the hook." "Wouldn't dream of it." She walked into his life like a whisper of truth, and left a storm in her wake. Not for destruction, but for rebirth. They said she was chasing his fortune. But all she ever wanted was to be seen, to be heard, to belong. And in the end, the billionaire didn't save her. She saved them both. Have you ever been judged for the truth you spoke? Or lost someone because you said what had to be said? Tell us in the comments. Your story might inspire someone who's still afraid to speak up. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.